the day they fired me. Apex Innovations stock was trading at $87.43 per share. Today, as I sip my champagne, watching their quarterly earnings report, it's hovering at $12.18 and still falling. Funny how karma works when you finally decide to play its game. 364 days ago, I was Martha Sullivan, Senior Financial Analyst at Apex Innovations, the darling of Wall Street with their revolutionary predictive consumption algorithms. Today, I'm still Martha Sullivan, but I'm something else entirely. The woman who watched them burn from a penthouse view they paid for. Let me tell you how it happened. I joined Apex 5 years ago when they were still a promising startup with big dreams and bigger promises. The company had developed software that supposedly could predict consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy, allowing businesses to optimize inventory and marketing strategies. By the time I arrived, they had secured Series C funding and were preparing for their IPO. My role was straightforward: ensure the financial models supporting our growth projections were sound. I had a reputation for meticulousness that bordered on obsession, 3 degrees in finance and statistics, and a pathological inability to overlook discrepancies. This made me excellent at my job, but not particularly beloved at office happy hours. "Martha, you need to loosen up," my colleague Dylan would say, his arm casually draped over my chair, beer breath too close to my face. Nobody likes working with someone who's counting decimal places while everyone else is counting shots. But my precision had served me well. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice and was reporting directly to Eliza Brandt, our CFO. Eliza was one of the few women in Apex's upper echelon, and she had taken me under her wing. "In this business, Martha, women like us can't afford mistakes," she'd told me once, straightening her immaculate blazer. "We have to be twice as good to be considered half as competent." I took her words to heart, triple-checking every report, questioning every assumption in our models. This vigilance made me valuable, but also dangerous, as I would soon discover. The trouble began 8 months before my termination, when I noticed inconsistencies in our customer retention data. Small discrepancies at first, numbers that didn't quite match across different reports, growth projections that seemed increasingly detached from reality. I flagged these issues to Eliza, who assured me they were aware of the reporting anomalies and were working to resolve them. But the anomalies persisted, and as I dug deeper, they began to look less like glitches and more like deliberate manipulations. Our quarterly reports to investors were showcasing retention rates 15% higher than our internal dashboards indicated. Our flagship product's efficacy was being overstated by significant margins. When I brought this to Eliza again, her response was different. "Martha," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper though we were alone in her office. "Sometimes companies need to present their best face to the market while they work through temporary challenges. It's not unusual." "But these aren't just optimistic interpretations, Eliza. These are fabrications," I countered, sliding the comparative analysis across her desk. She didn't look at the papers. "The board is aware of certain aggressive projections. They've assured me everything will balance out by year-end when the new product suite launches." I should have left it there. Should have nodded and retreated to my cubicle, pretended I hadn't seen what I'd seen. But that pathological meticulousness of mine wouldn't allow it. "If these projections don't balance out, we're committing securities fraud," I said quietly. Eliza's perfectly manicured hand twitched, the only break in her composed demeanor. "That's a serious accusation, Martha. One I'd advise you not to repeat unless you have absolute proof." I spent the next 2 weeks gathering that proof. Late nights, weekends, combing through years of data. Building a comprehensive case showing the systematic inflation of Apex's performance metrics. It wasn't just recent reports. This had been happening since before the IPO. Subtle enough to escape regular audits, but substantial enough to significantly impact our valuation. When I had everything organized, I requested a meeting with both Eliza and James Harrington, our CEO. Eliza tried to dissuade me, but I insisted. This was too big to ignore. The meeting was set for Tuesday morning, Monday evening. I received a call from Human Resources asking me to come in early for a routine review. I arrived at 7:30 a.m. to find Thomas Reed, head of HR, and two security guards waiting for me. Thomas handed me a termination letter citing breach of confidentiality and corporate espionage. According to the letter, I had been caught extracting proprietary data and attempting to sell it to competitors. "This is absurd," I protested, my hands shaking as I held the letter. "I've never—" "We have the evidence, Ms. Sullivan," Thomas said coldly. "Emails from your company account to Tech Vanguard offering our client data in exchange for compensation. The cybersecurity team intercepted them last night." "That's impossible. I never sent any such emails." "Your credentials were used. The emails originated from your terminal during hours when you were in the building alone." My mind raced. I'd been working late, yes, but I'd never contacted any competitors. Someone had framed me, obviously, but in that moment of shock, I couldn't process who or how. Thomas continued with practiced detachment. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately. You'll be escorted to collect your personal belongings, then off the premises. Your final paycheck will be mailed after deductions for company property and legal fees associated with this breach." "Legal fees? You're planning to sue me for something I didn't do." Apex takes intellectual property theft very seriously. "Ms. Sullivan, you should expect to hear from our legal team shortly." I was in a daze as the security guards watched me empty my desk into a cardboard box. Colleagues averted their eyes as I was marched through the open office. Only Dylan approached, his expression a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. "Jesus, Martha, corporate espionage. I didn't think you had it in you." I couldn't even respond. 20 minutes after arriving, I was standing on the sidewalk outside Apex Tower, clutching a box containing 5 years of my professional life, with security guards ensuring I didn't re-enter. By noon, my company email was deactivated, my access badge disabled, and my reputation in the financial sector effectively destroyed. Eliza, James, and the executive team had moved swiftly to contain what they framed as a serious security breach. They issued a press release assuring stakeholders that no sensitive information had been compromised and that the disgruntled employee had been identified and removed before any damage occurred. I spent the next week in a haze, alternating between panic and rage. I consulted 3 different lawyers, all of whom delivered the same grim assessment. Fighting Apex would be prohibitively expensive, especially with the fabricated email evidence they claimed to have. The best strategy was to maintain a low profile and hope the scandal blew over without criminal charges being filed. "Even if we could prove your innocence," explained Patricia Morrison, the third attorney I consulted, "Apex would drag the proceedings out until you were financially ruined. Companies like that have legal teams specifically to handle situations like yours." "So they can just destroy my career with impunity?" I asked incredulously. Patricia gave me a sympathetic look. "Welcome to corporate America, Ms. Sullivan. The House always wins." 2 weeks after my termination, Apex announced record quarterly earnings and their stock jumped 12%. The financial press lauded their consistent outperformance and robust client retention. Analysts upgraded their price targets. James Harrington appeared on financial news networks talking about their planned expansion into Asian markets. Meanwhile, I couldn't get interviews. Word had spread about my alleged misconduct, and no financial firm wanted to touch me. My savings were dwindling, and the looming threat of legal action from Apex kept me awake at night. It was during one of these sleepless nights, scrolling through job listings I knew wouldn't respond to my applications, that I received an anonymous email. "Not all of us believe their version of events. Check your mailbox tomorrow." The message came from a generic email address and couldn't be traced back to anyone specific at Apex. I was skeptical, but intrigued. The next morning, a plain manila envelope waited in my mailbox. No return address, no note inside, just a USB drive. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting it to be empty or, worse, to contain some kind of malware. Instead, I found dozens of internal Apex documents, email exchanges between executives discussing the Sullivan situation, meeting minutes where my termination was planned days before the alleged discovery of wrongdoing, and most damning of all, instructions from James to the IT department to create a convincing trail using my credentials. The anonymous whistleblower had given me everything I needed to clear my name, but as I reviewed the documents more carefully, I realized they had given me something far more valuable: proof of the systematic fraud I'd uncovered before my termination. The emails included frank discussions about maintaining investor confidence through enhanced reporting and strategic data presentation. In one exchange, James instructed the data science team to adjust the algorithms to deliver more favorable outcomes before an important investor presentation. I now had concrete evidence that Apex was deliberately misleading investors, partners, and regulators about the performance of their core products. This wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. The kind of fraud that had sent executives to federal prison in the past. My first instinct was to take everything to the SEC, become a whistleblower, and watch Apex crumble under regulatory scrutiny. But Patricia's words echoed in my mind. The House always wins. Even with this evidence, Apex's legal team would find ways to discredit me, paint me as a vindictive ex-employee fabricating evidence. The investigation would take years, and in the meantime, they would continue profiting from their deception. I needed a different approach, something that would hit them where it really hurt: their stock price and market reputation. Something that would ensure the executives who orchestrated my downfall experienced the same professional devastation they had inflicted on me. That's when the plan began to take shape. A plan that would require patience, precision, and the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had made me both a valued analyst and a threat to Apex's house of cards. First, I needed to establish a new identity in the financial world, one disconnected from Martha Sullivan and her tainted reputation. Using some of my remaining savings, I created an LLC registered in Wyoming, a state known for its corporate privacy laws. The company, Cassandra Analytics, would be my vehicle for what came next. Through Cassandra, I established a financial analysis blog focusing on tech stocks. I was careful to keep my true identity hidden, writing under the pseudonym M. Cassidy, and cultivating a persona as a veteran industry insider with connections throughout Silicon Valley. To build credibility, I published insightful analyses of various tech companies, showcasing the expertise I had developed during my years at Apex without revealing my specific background. For 6 months, I built Cassandra Analytics' reputation through accurate predictions and nuanced understanding of the tech sector. The blog gained a following among retail investors, then caught the attention of financial journalists who began citing my analyses. I was meticulous about maintaining anonymity, using VPNs and conducting all business through layers of digital protection. While building this new persona, I was also preparing my case against Apex. The whistleblower documents provided a roadmap to their fraudulent practices, but I needed more current information to make a compelling case. I cultivated sources within the company, disgruntled employees, overlooked middle managers, even a member of the janitorial staff who had access to discarded documents. Bit by bit, I assembled a comprehensive picture of Apex's continuing deception. The most valuable intelligence came from Sarah Jenkins, a data scientist who had been questioning the integrity of the company's practices. We met in person only once, at a coffee shop 3 cities away from Apex headquarters. She arrived nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. "They're getting more aggressive with the manipulations," she confided, sliding a flash drive across the table. "The algorithms aren't just being tweaked anymore, they're being completely overridden. The client dashboards show one set of results while the reports to investors show another." "How many people know about this?" I asked. "Most of the data team suspects something's off, but we're compartmentalized. Nobody has the full picture except the executives." She hesitated. "And now you, I guess." Sarah provided regular updates over the following months, each confirming that Apex was doubling down on their fraudulent practices rather than correcting course. Their quarterly earnings continued to exceed expectations. driving their stock price to new heights. The final piece fell into place when Apex announced they had secured a major contract with Global Corp, a multinational conglomerate that would implement their predictive algorithms across all divisions. The press release claimed the deal was worth over $200 million and would transform Global Corp's consumer engagement strategy. The market responded enthusiastically, sending Apex stock soaring again. Through my network of sources, I discovered the truth. The Global Corp deal was significantly smaller than reported, with most of the supposed $200 million contingent on performance metrics that Apex knew their software couldn't achieve. They were betting that by the time this became apparent, they could either improve the algorithms or find ways to obscure the failure. It was time to execute the final phase of my plan. I prepared a comprehensive report on Apex innovations, documenting their systematic fraud with meticulous detail. The report included evidence of manipulated algorithm performance data dating back 3 years, comparisons of internal dashboards versus reported results, testimony from anonymous insiders about deliberate deception, analysis of the Global Corp deal revealing its true, much smaller scope, financial projections showing Apex's inevitable collapse once the truth emerged. The report was over 200 pages, supported by thousands of documents, all organized with the precision that had once made me valuable to Apex. I published it on the Cassandra Analytics website on a Monday morning, just before market open. Simultaneously, I sent copies to financial journalists at major publications, regulatory agencies, and Apex's largest institutional investors. I had timed the release perfectly, 2 days before Apex's quarterly earnings announcement, when market attention would be focused on the company. The effect was immediate and devastating. As journalists began reporting on the allegations, Apex's stock plummeted 30% in the first hour of trading. By market close, it had lost over 45% of its value. Trading was halted twice due to volatility. James Harrington appeared on Financial News that afternoon, dismissing the report as baseless accusations from an anonymous source with clear malicious intent. But his usual confidence was visibly shaken. Investors weren't buying his assurances, especially when 3 major clients issued statements that they were reviewing their relationship with Apex in light of the allegations. The next day brought more pain for Apex. The SEC announced a formal investigation. Class action lawsuits on behalf of shareholders were filed in multiple jurisdictions. Global Corp publicly stated they were reconsidering the terms of their contract. By the scheduled earnings call, Apex's stock had lost over 60% of its value. The call itself was a disaster. James attempted to focus on positive developments, but analysts pummeled him with questions about the Cassandra report's allegations. When one asked directly about the discrepancies between reported and actual client retention rates, James abruptly ended the call. The following week, I watched from my apartment as Apex's carefully constructed facade crumbled. More whistleblowers came forward. Emboldened by the initial report, the board announced an internal investigation. Major clients began suspending their contracts pending the outcome of the various investigations. Eliza Brandt resigned, citing personal reasons. 3 other executives followed. James Harrington remained, increasingly isolated and desperate as he tried to salvage what remained of the company's reputation. Throughout this period, I maintained my anonymity. Cassidy continued publishing analyses of the unfolding situation, becoming the go-to expert on what financial media now called the Apex fraud. I was careful never to reveal any information that only Martha Sullivan would know, presenting everything as the work of an industry insider with exceptional sources. The final act came 2 months after my initial report. With Apex's stock now trading below $15, down from nearly $90, the board finally ousted James Harrington. The press release announcing his departure included a carefully worded acknowledgement of irregularities in the company's reporting practices and promised full cooperation with ongoing investigations. That evening, I received another anonymous email. Justice served, they're cleaning house. I traced the IP address to Apex headquarters. Someone inside, perhaps Sarah, perhaps someone else who had witnessed my downfall, was letting me know that the company was finally facing consequences. But the revenge I had orchestrated wasn't complete yet. I had one final card to play. Using some of the money I'd made through strategic short positions on Apex stock, opened through anonymous offshore accounts before publishing my report, I purchased a small but significant stake in the company through Cassandra Analytics. As a shareholder, I now had standing to attend the emergency investor meeting scheduled for the following week. I debated with myself about attending. It would be risky. Someone might recognize me despite the 10 months that had passed since my termination. But the opportunity to witness firsthand the culmination of my plan was too tempting to resist. I transformed myself for the meeting. Gone was the conservative financial analyst with her sensible suits and minimal makeup. In her place was a confident investment advisor with stylishly cut hair, designer glasses, and an aura of authority. Few people look closely at those they consider beneath them. I was counting on my former colleagues' indifference to work in my favor. The meeting was held in a downtown hotel ballroom. I arrived early, took a seat near the back, and watched as nervous board members and executives filed onto the stage. The interim CEO, a former board member named Robert Kavanaugh, looked particularly uncomfortable as he prepared to address the hostile crowd of investors. "Good morning," he began, his voice already defensive. "I want to thank you all for coming today during this challenging period for Apex Innovations. I recognize that many of you have concerns about recent revelations regarding our business practices under previous leadership." The understatement elicited bitter laughter from the audience. Robert soldiered on, outlining the steps being taken to restore integrity to the company's operations and reporting. He announced a complete audit of all products and client relationships, a restructuring of the executive team, and enhanced oversight mechanisms. During the question period, furious investors demanded explanations for how the fraud had continued unchecked for so long. When Robert attempted to blame everything on James Harrington and the departed executives, I decided it was time to speak. I approached the microphone set up in the aisle, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Mr. Kavanaugh, I'm Cassidy from Cassandra Analytics," I said, causing a ripple of recognition through the room. The author of the report that had exposed Apex's fraud was now addressing its leadership directly. "Your characterization of this situation as the work of a few bad actors is, frankly, implausible. The systematic nature of the deception suggests institutional knowledge at multiple levels. My question is simple. How can investors trust anything Apex says when the company's culture clearly prioritized deception over integrity?" Robert blinked rapidly, clearly unprepared to face the person who had triggered Apex's collapse. "Ms. Cassidy, I appreciate your question. You're right that this was not just the work of a few individuals. That's why we're committed to a complete cultural reset at Apex. New leadership, new oversight, new values." "And what about the victims of this fraud?" I pressed. "Not just the investors who lost money, but the employees who may have raised concerns and were silenced or removed. Will Apex make amends to those individuals as well?" A flash of recognition crossed Thomas Reed's face as he sat behind Robert on the stage. The head of HR who had delivered my termination letter was staring at me intently, a dawning horror in his eyes as he began to see through my disguise. Robert, oblivious to Thomas's reaction, gave a non-answer about exploring all options for making things right. I thanked him and returned to my seat. Feeling Thomas's eyes following me, I had taken a risk. But the satisfaction of confronting them, of making them answer for their actions in some small way, was worth it. As the meeting concluded, I slipped out quickly, avoiding Thomas, who appeared to be trying to intercept me. Outside the hotel, I hailed a cab and directed it to take a circuitous route back to my apartment, ensuring I wasn't followed. That evening, Apex issued a press release announcing another round of executive departures, including Thomas Reed. The company's stock, which had briefly stabilized in the 15 range, dropped again on the news, closing at $12.18. Which brings me to today, exactly 1 year after my termination, watching Apex's continued decline from the comfort of my new penthouse apartment. purchased with proceeds from my prescient short positions and the growing consulting business of Cassandra Analytics. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. Did you see? They're bringing in a completely new board. Clean sweep. I smile and type back. Justice takes many forms. The story of Martha Sullivan, disgraced financial analyst, has been forgotten in the larger scandal of Apex's fraud. But Cassidy's reputation as the financial sleuth who exposed one of the tech industry's most significant deceptions continues to grow. Clients seek Cassandra Analytics services for due diligence, risk assessment, and investment guidance. I've built something new from the ashes of what was taken from me. Sometimes I wonder if Eliza, James, or any of the others have figured out who was behind their downfall. If they've made the connection between the analysts they discarded and the whistleblower who destroyed them, part of me hopes they have, that they understand the precision of the retribution visited upon them, the meticulous planning that went into their undoing. In the end, they were right to fear my attention to detail, my unwillingness to overlook discrepancies. They just shouldn't have made me their enemy. I finish my champagne and close my laptop, shutting off the financial news with its continuing coverage of Apex's implosion. Tomorrow, Cassandra Analytics will publish an analysis of another tech company's questionable practices. Life goes on. Business continues. But tonight, I celebrate the completion of the most detailed, most precise analysis of my career. The systematic dismantling of those who thought they could discard me with impunity. The day they fired me, Apex Innovations stock was trading at 87.43 years. Today, it's worth 12.18 and falling. Karma, it turns out, is just revenge with better branding.